how the theory of evolution of consciousness, TEC, was born. Humanity has always tried to understand itself. Sometimes it did so through the body and energy, thus the idea of chakras was born. Other times, by observing the sky and the movement of the planets, astrology was created. And at times, by observing thoughts, emotions, and behavior, psychology came into existence. However, modern psychology has not clearly classified these inner processes according to their essential function. Instead of recognizing the different parts of the psyche, it often treats symptoms superficially, without addressing the structural organization of inner life. Therefore, throughout this presentation, we will use psychology, but already structured according to TEC, where the psychic parts are clearly defined, their functions precisely distinguished, and their integration follows the natural developmental path of consciousness. Each of these attempts brought a piece of the truth, but all of them looked only at aspects of the human being, like observing the same house, each from a different angle. That is why there have been so many different pictures of the same essence. All these disciplines have perceived reality in fragments, and each fragment seemed like the whole picture. The theory of evolution of consciousness, TEC, does not reject these traditions. Instead, it does something that was naturally missing. It unites the psyche, the body, energy, and cosmic forces into a single coherent structure. TEC sees the human not as a body separated from the soul, nor as thought separated from emotion, nor as an individual isolated from the cosmos. For example, the first chakra, Muladhara, represents the foundation of the body and the struggle for survival. In astrology, Earth symbolizes material security and instinctive needs. In psychology, this corresponds to the sensory part of the psyche, the part that seeks safety, food, warmth, protection. The second chakra, Svadhisthana, is associated with emotions and the desire for connection. In astrology, the moon symbolizes emotions, emotional security, and inner state. In psychology, it corresponds to the emotional part of the psyche, the inner world of desires, fears, and relationships. The third chakra, Manipura, represents willpower, self-confidence, and the ability to act. In astrology, Mars symbolizes action, competition, and personal strength. In psychology, it is the active part of the psyche, the impulse to act, achieve goals, and control the environment. The fourth chakra, Anahata, is connected to love, relationships, and the feeling of harmony. In astrology, Venus represents love, attraction, beauty, and the desire to be liked. In psychology, it corresponds to the relational part of the psyche, the drive to be loved, accepted, and connected. The fifth chakra, Vishuddha, symbolizes communication, truth, and the ability to express oneself. In astrology, Mercury governs thought, speech, and the exchange of ideas. In psychology, it represents the mental part of the psyche, the need to understand the world and to communicate. The sixth chakra, Ajna, or the third eye, represents intuition, vision, and inner perception. In astrology, the sun symbolizes the conscious center, the clear sense of self, and the ability to choose and lead. In psychology, it is the ego, the center of subjective consciousness that organizes and directs the entire psychic structure. The seventh chakra, Sahasrara, symbolizes the connection to cosmic consciousness, enlightenment, and the feeling of unity with all that exists. For this chakra, at present, we have no specific planet representing it in astrology, because it is not a part of the personality, but an expression of the awakened soul that transcends the personal level. Perhaps in the future, new symbols will be discovered that map this dimension as well. But for now, it remains the field where subjective and objective consciousness merge into one. Thus, different systems, chakras, planets, and psychic parts are not opposed to each other, but are simply different mirrors of the same inner structure. TEC recognizes these correlations and, instead of seeing them separately, unites them into one coherent map of the evolution of human consciousness. The human being is an organized system of consciousness, evolving through clearly defined stages. TEC is not a philosophy, nor a psychology, nor a religion. It is a structure that describes the development of consciousness through the human being, from unconsciousness, through integration, to the awakening and leadership of the soul. It is a map that explains the path of each individual consciousness through 4 phases of growth, connecting 5 disciplines into one unity. Philosophy, asking why the human exists. Psychology, exploring where consciousness evolves. Astrology, mapping the structure of the psyche. Quantum theory, describing the foundation of the universe. And spirituality, guiding consciousness to its final goal. At the heart of TEC lies one simple but essential realization: consciousness is life. Life does not create consciousness. Rather, consciousness is what we call life itself. Any being capable of perceiving something, reacting to change, or adapting to the environment is alive precisely because it possesses consciousness. This ability to relate to the external world does not arise from biological processes, but is an expression of consciousness in its most basic form. TEC clearly distinguishes between 3 fundamental levels of consciousness: cosmic, life, and human. Life consciousness is its biological expression, visible in all living beings that move, react, and orient themselves. Human consciousness is an even higher stage, the ability to question, to choose, to reflect. But the human being is not the final point of development. He is only one phase, part of a much longer process that extends beyond our perception. Our senses and mental constructs are limited to 3 dimensions, and so we can only hint at, but not fully grasp, the reality beyond those boundaries. Nevertheless, something entirely new begins within the human. Consciousness starts to perceive its own development. This is the moment when true transformation begins. We are no longer just beings that function, but beings that examine themselves, that make conscious choices, and that can direct their own growth. TEC describes this development through 4 phases, from an unintegrated psyche without a clear center, through the creation of the ego as a coordinator, to the awakening of the soul that begins to illuminate the personality, and finally to the moment when the soul takes the lead and the ego serves it. The ego is not the enemy. It is a necessary tool that gathers the scattered psyche and organizes it around a clear center. But why does consciousness come into a body? The body and life allow consciousness to experience boundaries, choices, consequences, experiences that are not possible on any other level of existence. Through life, consciousness learns, builds itself, and expands. When consciousness completes the lessons it can learn in a given life or a given body, it leaves that body. At the moment it departs, physical death occurs. Consciousness then returns to the spiritual world and chooses new lessons for learning, a new life, a new body. It chooses a life and lessons that will help it in its further development. With each raising of human consciousness to a higher level, a new vibration is created in the universe. It is a point of light that did not exist before. And each such point moves the boundary of existence. Darkness is not chased away. It simply retreats before the newly created light. Thus, the universe expands, not because galaxies are moving apart, but because light, that is, consciousness, is expanding. That is why TEC says, the evolution of consciousness is not a personal process. It is a cosmic contribution. This is the essence of TEC. It is not a belief system. It is not dogma. TEC is a logical, structured description of the evolution of consciousness within the human being and through the human being in the universe. If this sounds familiar to you, maybe you haven't learned it. Maybe you have simply recognized it. Because the real things in life are not learned, they are recognized. If you want to continue exploring the path of consciousness with me, subscribe to the channel and hit like. It helps this knowledge reach further. And if something here resonated with you, leave a comment, not to agree, but to awaken your own thinking. Because that's where true growth begins.